strive to bring everything about Black culture to the light, regardless to whether it's something that you bear witness to. It is part of our story. It is part of our history, and we give honors and respect to that. Today, I have a very special guest, someone who we're going to, and matter of fact, it is Hoodoo Heritage Month. And for that, I really I feel like I am, blessed to be able to interview Mama Yana, who is a Hoodoo practitioner. But not only that, she's a historian on the topic, and we strive to build on Hoodoo and what Hoodoo is from an academic framework. Whether it's something that you want to partake in or whether it's something you want to learn about, I feel like you will definitely appreciate the conversation that we are about to have. Mama Yana, thank you for being on the show. You have been highly recommended by a lot of intellectuals that I build with in the Africana space. And so it is an honor and a pleasure to have you on the show.
It is an honor and a pleasure to be here, absolutely. And the recommendations are heartfelt, trust and believe.
Indeed, indeed. So let's start. Let's start, man. Can you so with it being Hoodoo Heritage Month and with this being the focus of today's show, can you provide an overview of the historical origins of Hoodoo?
Okay, so I like the fact that you are mentioning that it is Hoodoo Heritage Month. And I want to emphasize on that word heritage, right? Because the word heritage correlates and coincides with what my belief and my understanding of what Hoodoo is. And with that being said, it is the basis and the logic of African Americans in the U.S. African Americans who are descendant of those who were once enslaved and brought over from Africa through the transatlantic slave trade, but also the transatlantic, intercontinental slave trade. I find that a lot of people skip over that, or they denounce the fact that African Americans are literally the last stop, but they forget to acknowledge the fact that African Americans are also a product of the intercontinental slave trade as well. Those Africans were brought in through the Caribbean islands and also straight from Africa. And so, with that being said, those two migrational groups had to come together on a foreign land, one that went through a migration a couple of times and another that went through a migration one time. And so those groups have to come together, being a background from Congo, Igbo, Akan, Mende, Yoruba, Fan, Fula, Ewe, you name it, primarily from West and Central Africa. And those people have to come together and focus and live on a land through the lens, the social lens in which they were dealt, that they were forced to live on. And so this is what makes Hoodoo its basis in its origin. It became something as those people came together and decided to, not decided, but actually had children. It became something with the fact that these people had to come together in the U.S. Southern parts of the U.S., but also we don't want to denounce those who were free people of color, so on and so forth, but primarily in the Bible Belt. This is where the origins come from. And with those origins, it created a culture that's indicative to itself. It created a culture that would look like there's some overlap that reflects every African ethnic group that we recognize through the West and Central Africans. including the diaspora, this culture was formed. So, with the fact that this is the sixth annual Hoodoo Heritage Month, emphasis on heritage, and the way that I see Hoodoo is as it is a culture that African Americans must live and express themselves through. Um, this is where I'm seeing the origins come from through the basis of those things, you know.
Yeah.
So a lot of people would say that Hoodoo is a mixture of things. I don't I don't go by that. It is the lens in which Africans had to live on the land.
Wow.
You know.
You know, that's amazing idea and concept. And I remember, you know, being a child in North Carolina in Southern America and hearing my grandmother tell stories about her father going to the crossroads with his guitar. And when I was young, those were just stories. But when I began to study our history and our culture, I'm like, whoa, okay, this is African as hell. This is not only hoodoo science, but Congo science. It's related to Eshu and all of these different African ideas. But even at the time, you know, my grandmother, even though she told me these stories, she might not have been aware of the origin. But it just goes to show to the idea that even our people here in the diaspora in North America, they might not have been aware of or after, you know, generations, they might not have necessarily been aware of the origins of these certain things, but Africanisms in America have always been prevalent and a part of our culture. And it's just an amazing idea to see that cultural link between like myself, my grandmother, and our African ancestors that were brought over here during enslavement. Um, and speaking of that, when it comes to hoodoo, can you explain the role of the ancestors in hoodoo practices?
And so when it comes to the role of ancestors, in the Hoodoo belief, anything in regards to Hoodoo, um, it's rooted in spirit. And the way that we see spirit is the connection to those that came before us. And everybody in those spirits that came before us is what helps to give us our power, our will, and so on and so forth to keep on persevering. It is understood that we are actually the ancestors that are currently walking on this earth for those that come after us. And so it is very much important to honor ancestors, our elders, those who came before us, venerate them, and memorialize them so that we can continue on to have a joyous bloodline to represent our bloodline to the highest degree, so that we can have the mental mind frame in order to survive. And so, understanding that, you know, people in our culture would say, you act just like grandma. You know what I'm saying? Well, got to be Uncle Joe that was, that child, or that child is Uncle Joe,
Right.
we of understanding that the spirits speak to us, we have seen phenomenon um, that is connected to our omen and our taboos and our customs. Like, for example, it is said that before someone gets ready to pass, especially if they're of older age, uh, especially like past 40, into 50s, 60s, 70s. they start to call out onto those who was there before them. Um, it is an omen that they're getting ready to pass. So all of these natural phenomenons our spirits come to visit us in our dreams and so on and so forth. We understand that that is a part of the science that we cannot ignore. We can't ignore it. And so we build those people up so that we can continue to live on, because those people keep reaching out to us. We keep seeing it over and over again in many different ways. So ancestors play a huge role in hoodoo. It is no African traditional religion or cultural aspect that I know of, and I'm initiated of too, where ancestors can be skipped over. We cannot skip over them. It is understood that deities cannot come before ancestors.
Now that's, hold on, say that again.
Deities cannot come before ancestors. It is impossible. It is said that ancestors are the ones that they paved the way, and they are the ones that help to communicate the messages between the realm of being earthbound, the ancestral realm, into the deified realm. And some of these ancestors are actually deified, but you have to go up to those steps. So ancestors come first, but ancestors are the ones that's closest to us. We always call out to our ancestors too. We always say grandmother, granddad, this, so on and so forth. Whether we understand that's what we're doing or not, it's just embedded into our culture.
It's interesting too, like that made me think about 2 points. One, when George Floyd had that knee on his neck, who did he call out to? His mother. Right? And then secondly, when we look at Abrahamic religions, if you really look at them, whether it's Judaism, Islam, or Christianity, it's straight up ancestor veneration. That's all it is.
Absolutely.
If it's the Christians and the Jews with the Hebrews, and the Muslims venerating their ancestors in Arabia, it's all it is. But when it is African, therefore it's an issue, right? Like it becomes demonized. But the three major religions that are on this, are on every continent where humans inhabit, are pretty much have a root somewhere in ancestral veneration. It is, and you can't really deny it. Whether if you read these books, if you read the Torah, the Bible, and the Quran, that's what they're doing. They're venerating their ancestors. Nobody said there was anything wrong with it, but I just like to point that out when a lot of people, tend to think that ancestor veneration, when it comes to an African paradigm, is something that is quote unquote demonic, because we hear that often, you know what I mean? But regardless of that, I want to kind of segue to this. Although hoodoo is hoodoo on its own, and speaking of Abrahamic religions, I saw a few posts this week about the intersectionality of Christianity and hoodoo and the early Black church. And I wanted to ask you about the intersection between Christianity, hoodoo, the early Black church, and also who was Bishop C.H. Mason.
Okay, here's the thing. So considering that hoodoo began its known, recognized, established meant in the Bible Belt, right? And we know that the Bible Belt is Christian based. There's different parts of the Bible Belt. We have New Orleans hoodoo, and then we also have the Protestant hoodoo, so on and so forth. One Catholic and one isn't. And with that being said, if our ancestors are those who came over here having to live through the social norms in which they were given um, in on this land, and it was within the Bible Belt. Although Christianity is separate on its own, as it reaches outside of the U.S., but as it relates to Hoodoo, Christianity is not necessarily separated from Hoodoo, only because of the cultural aspect. The Christianity and the Abrahamic faith, the westernized ideology or understanding that is embedded into the Hoodoo culture because we had to live in this society as fellow Americans, but Africans. The Christian part isn't really separated that far away from it. Most known Hoodoo practitioners were known to be quote unquote devout Christian. But also you separate the Africanism from the African. You can't. You just can't. So although that they were devout Christians, spirit, understanding the possession and the deepness of spirit goes will never leave them. And so the way that they practiced their Christianity was something that's just totally different. The way that they practiced their spirituality, going into Bishop C.H. Mason, was through the Holy Spirit possession, speaking in tongues, being able to see spirits, prophesizing, so on and so forth. And as you stated before, the Bible was nothing but ancestral veneration. But within the Bible, they also speak to those spirits. These people were seers, they were diviners, casting lots, so on and so forth. So that aspect of the Africanism connected to Abrahamic faith, our ancestors was able to see that and say, hey, well, I'm going to call myself Christian because this is our common theme that we have been dealt, and we have to come together. But we are not going to denounce the fact that spirit is here. We're not going to denounce the fact that spirit is whole within us. And the thing is with Mr. Mason, when he created his denomination within the Christian faith,
which is Kojic for those that don't know.
Yeah, Kojic, which and I went to a Kojic church as a little girl. I actually go get the dirt from the Kojic church now because the church is still there, the building is still there. But anyway, he became baptized he baptized, and then he started to speak in tongues, and he said that he was overcome with spirit. And if you know anything about Africanism and baptism, this is an African thing, the baptism, as there are water spirits, especially in the water. And so with that being said, the African aspect of CJ Mason, I mean not CJ, but CH Mason, my son name is CJ, and I just heard his voice. The African aspect cannot be pulled away from him. The natural aspect cannot be pulled away from him. He has this well-known famous picture with him with this twisted wood that he said possessed spiritual healing and spiritual power to help people. This is something that just could not be separated. And also, if you look at the Abrahamic faith and our logic and the way that we had to live in this country, if you look at the lore, even in our lore, you see the devil mentioned a lot. That's Abrahamic.
Yeah.
Hallelujah. Amen. Angels. So on and so forth. Man, there's so many stories around the devil. You spoke of the crossroads, and they say you go to the crossroads to actually meet the devil. And a lot of people they try to change it to say the man at the crossroads. No, they say for what they used to say. They said the devil at the crossroads.
There's even a movie, Crossroads, with old dude that used to that played in Karate Kid.
Yes, absolutely. And the way that they review things as the devil, devil was like an umbrella term for anything that was either demonic or something that is considered low level. But again, we still use those um, Abrahamic terms.
Right.
These Abrahamic terms, even in the way that we see our herbs too. The palm of Christ is the castor oil plant, so on and so forth. Man, it's a lot, devil shoestring, devil's claw. All of these Abrahamic terms.
Right.
Pull them apart. You can't really pull them apart. What separates them, long story short, is when you pull out the African American culture and you go somewhere else to the Christian religion and you notice, okay, this isn't hoodoo.
Yeah.
So that's why I always circle back to hoodoo is African American culture.
Do you see the fact that we kind of, now I don't want to say disguised, but that we, within our Christian practices from the time on the plantation to 100 years after, how it was a part of our Christianity. Is that kind of the same type of thing as maybe in the Caribbean, Isheshe and Catholicism?
So when it comes to Christianity and the understanding, like in regards to the Bible, right, and then how it compares to the Caribbean, and then in Isheshe, so on and so forth, Isheshe Lapa, they have a thing in common. The thing in common is the African logic and way of thought is a holy word. And if you look at Isheshe Lapa or any thing that is Ifa-centric or Orisha-centric, we have what's called the Holy Odu. Now, if you go, and we actually recite Holy Odu, which is an incantation to do our spiritual working. Everything is backed up by Holy Odu. In a way that, if you think about it, you get all these Africans that come over that have to work together under a common belief. One of those common beliefs was you can't denounce the power of a holy word. What gives a holy word power is a common belief that these words are true. What gives it power? Being able to say these words to enrich or give power to what you mean, what you say, or what you're doing. So these Africans came together, even on the Caribbean, and started to recite what they saw was a holy word. And some of these holy words correlate or correspond with the same holy word that they were used to. Some of the things that we do in hoodoo is actually done in African traditional religion, feeding the tongue honey and reciting a certain incantation, which is a holy word. That is something that's done in hoodoo in order to persuade or, ensure that you're not misunderstood or you communicate well. Right. We feed our tongue honey. We feed our tongue grains of paradise. They call it atari in Orisha Ifa, to strengthen and give power to the tongue. And the way we do this ritual is really it's a quick ritual. We just chew it. We may follow it with a spirit. Boom. In hoodoo we use whiskey. Over there in Nigeria they use gin.
Right.
And the Caribbean they use rum.
Right.
We feed the tongue. We say the incantation, and then boom, that's a quick ritual. So what I'm trying to say here is the fact that this holy word, which is the Bible, is how we came together to accept the Christianity part.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause like I said, I don't know. I'm telling you, I don't know not one African traditional religion that doesn't use a holy word, which is based on lore or the understanding of those who came before.
Mm.
Now in Hoodoo, we do lore, and they will call that the there's two different understandings of the Bible. They say there's the Negro understanding of the Bible, and
Right.
the understanding of the Bible, and the way that we saw the Bible, our ancestors saw the Bible, was just a little bit different. Like I said, they could not pull the African aspect.
Right.
You could take the African from Africa, but you can't take the African out of Africa,
Right.
no matter what.
It reminds me, I remember seeing a video, and like for one, that like when we think of the idea of, our grandmothers and their friends and people of that era catching the Holy Ghost in church, right? That shit don't
Mm-hmm.
happen in white churches. Like, that's not a thing. That is African. I saw on
Mm-hmm.
I saw I watched on YouTube. I watched it was a Oshun ceremony at the Oshun River in Nigeria, and from seeing elders as a kid, black elders as a kid catching the Holy Ghost, to what was happening at the Oshun River during this ceremony was the exact same thing. We were laughing in the and the Uncle Leroy Hoodoo group about a lot of people that are attempting to distance themselves from Africa. But everything that we do is an offspring of our roots. It doesn't mean that here in America we didn't, take from our African roots and evolve and create different things. It's not to say that all the people of the diaspora have beautiful things that they have added to the culture. But to
Mm-hmm.
understand the fact that white people don't catch the Holy Ghost, right? This doesn't happen in white churches. Now, maybe in the churches in the Appalachian Mountains or whatever, but that's probably because of their proximity to black folks during slavery, is what I would be guessing, and the fact that they're poor, right? And they have a class, they're connected by class, and they were, connected by proximity. But I like seriously, when I saw those sisters at the Ocean River at that ceremony, it looked just like seeing the elders in the church that I grew up in catching the Holy Ghost, and that is one of our African connections. I also wanted to ask you this. Like, I got a lot of questions for you because you're a brilliant person, and we definitely appreciate the time. Um, Big Pharma has often used things in nature to make medicines. Aspirin, for example. And I was listening to a podcast a couple of weeks ago. It was with a brother named Paul Rosalie. I think he might be Hispanic or whatever, but he dedicated his life to the conservation of the Amazon jungle, right? And he spoke of this
Mm-hmm.
story where when he first got down there, before he learned any type of survival skills, that somehow he caught MRSA, which is an infection, right? And it's an infection that kill you. And he had pus coming all out of his skin, his eyes. He woke up on his hammock, eyes closed, pus coming out his eyes. He almost died until the locals came, found him, and saved him. Then he spoke as a veteran who's been living in the Amazon jungle for over 15, 20 years now, he said, oh, that MRSA, he's like, now I know that ever happens. There's a certain tree here in the Amazon jungle. We go get something from this tree, we boil it, we put it on where the infection is. It's not like neosporin. It cures. This is what he said. He said it's not like neosporin where you have to wait a few days. He said it cures the infection on the spot. This is from nature, right? And so when it comes to herbs and plants in hoodoo, from a medical standpoint, how did our ancestors get the knowledge of these plants in order to make medicines from them? And what are your thoughts on the fact that Big Pharma uses these same concoctions to create synthetic medicines? But whenever we did it on a plantation till now, it's been considered, when we do it, it's considered pseudoscience.
That is one thing that is a struggle. One is considered pseudoscience because we're African. Right. And that speaks a lot to the class that you spoke of. We're at the lower level of the class, so therefore we are considered to be respected. And we are often painted to be childlike. Mm-hmm. Understanding of things is painted to be childlike.
Yeah, that's because white folks have a paternal instinct where they feel like we can't live without them. But go ahead.
Mm-hmm. And although our knowledge in which that we understand medicine is ancient, and what I mean by that is through trade, not, the slave trade, so on and so forth, but through trade in general, they didn't just trade people. They traded herbs, they traded plants, they traded vegetation, spices, so on and so forth.
Right.
Many of those things came from Africa, Now, the trading of these things happened before the trading of people to the U.S., A lot of the vegetation, a lot of the herbs, a lot of the roots, a lot of the things that actually exist here, there's a species that also exists in Africa. Mm. Our ancestors were able to recognize these species. Mm. Our ancestors wasn't, introduced to these things when they just, as soon as they got here, there are a lot of herbs, a lot of roots that exist in Africa and also in the Americas. We have hibiscus, right?
Right.
There is a famous, a well-known drink called Bissap in West Africa. Mm-hmm. It's in Africa, but then the hibiscus that we typically use here is native from Mexico. Mm. How to get to the U.S., right? Trade,
Right.
So with that being said, we came with the knowledge. A lot of our ancestors were also brought over because they knew how to cultivate these things. They knew how to raise these things. They didn't bring over no dummies, because what is sent is a dummy.
And do you remember recently where they tried to
about it?
Right, but do you remember recently in the news a couple months ago they attempted to act like and they created the narrative that we should be thankful for slavery because we learned skills during slavery, right? And it's like, no, we came here with it. We introduced y'all to these skills.
Pottery, all different type of things, pottery, engineering, blacksmithing, so on and so forth. These things existed because logically, what would be the sense to bring over people that do not have the skill set to raise, cultivate the things that you're trying to make money from? You're not trying to lose anything.
Right.
That makes no sense. How can you survive?
Right.
How can you? Eyes like that. And it's funny that you mentioned aspirin. You know, did you know that Zorna Hurston actually gives a recipe that includes aspirin?
Mm,
What it is two aspirins, and you put it into some whiskey, and she said it'll knock a person out. I'm gonna leave it like that. I'm gonna leave
mm.
it there
Yeah,
because
yeah.
purpose of
Right, right.
I'm trying to be um, responsible. But it's funny that you mentioned synthetic medicine. Um, Many people would think that aspirin or the use of aspirin in itself is pretty new, but really the roots of it comes from the weeping willow tree.
Mm,
And so we have an understanding of the weeping willow tree in Hoodoo as well. Hence the name. There's one custom that we follow. Don't plant it in your backyard or else you're going to call death.
okay.
The whipping willow tree connected to spirits.
Mm.
The whipping willow tree connected to spirits of death. And so if you are looking for a cemetery in your backyard, then that's okay. But other than that, um, medicinally, the whipping willow tree was used to treat infections, colds, and also a pain
Mm.
reliever. The twig was chewed on to relieve pain. And so they say aspirin, I'm putting quotes because not the tablet, has been used for over 3,500 years.
Mm.
3,500 years. So, um,
That's
big pharma.
no, I not to cut you off, but that's extremely valuable information that leads to the context that we're speaking of now.
Mhm.
3,500 years ago, primitive people did this. 2023, industrialized people do this, and we are the,
Mhm.
progenitors of science and medicine. But
Mhm.
we were already on it. But keep going. I'm sorry.
Already on it. And, oh,
All right, we're back. We're back. Had a few technical difficulties, um, but
yeah.
I'm here with Mama Yana, and we're embracing the knowledge of African history, culture, and the Africanisms in America, which Hoodoo
Mhm.
is one of them. And so, you know, there is a story that Frederick Douglass was, I think he was a child, and or he might have been a young man, can't remember, but uh, the slave owner was a cruel man, and he was going to confront him. And someone gave him some High John the Conqueror root to put in his pocket. And he went over there, and the slave owner tried to put hands on him, and he whooped the slave owner's ass.
Mhm.
And so, what is the story of High John the Conqueror, and what was the root, and was there and the root, and what was the root that was named after him?
Now, the thing is, this is why I love our lore.
Mm,
This is what lore is about.
mhm,
There are several different accounts and stories when it came to happen in that instance with Frederick Douglass, right? Some people say it was a mojo. Some people say, you know, they commonly express it as a hand, but High John root or John the Conqueror root is what is considered a hand. A
mm,
hand is anything that is able to assist you in whatever condition of life in which that you give power to or you command it to. So, with that being said, this hand was said to prevent him forever getting a whooping again or so on and so forth. So, Haja is separate from the root itself. High John is considered to be a spirit that was both a man in the flesh and also in spirit. High John was said to be to the people who were once enslaved the spirit of hope, perseverance, and freedom of mind, and freedom of spirit, and freedom of the physical. High John, it said that his spirit was so strong that you knew his spirit was there if people just started laughing on the plantation. They were laughing, or they would start to sing in joy. Now, this is an indication that their minds left, or the soul left, as High John was said, to be able to snatch your soul from your body without killing you. This is the aspect where it is understood that our ancestors had a very strong, resilient mind to hold on because freedom was coming. It is said that High John, either through the spirit or even while he was on the plantation in the flesh, because it said that High John spoke to people as well, said, hold on, freedom is coming. And it is said that High John was an African prince. Some say specifically from Central Africa, from the Congo. Some just leave it as, African, either from West or Central. And because he was a prince, he expressed royalty, patience, understanding, and he taught people to hold their head up high. He assigned people to do what it was that they were good at as well, in order for people to survive. And he shows that even through his character. It is said that High John was so mighty, no one can outwit him. He even beat the devil himself and married the devil's daughter. And this is how our people thought of High John. And this is considering he is rooted as a person that came before us. He is a deified ancestor because he is now connected to earth, which is the root. This root is said to come from Mexico, actually. And as we talked about the intercontinental trade and things that
we were there as well,
traded beforehand and so on, recorded to have the highest number of Congo enslaved Africans. And it's interesting that according to some parts of our lore in Hoodoo, that High John himself was from the Congo. So that's very, very interesting. And anybody that practice, African traditional religions, spiritualism, so on and so forth, how the Congo spirit comes about. The Congo spirit, or those who were ancestors from the Congo, are considered to be those that you cannot necessarily contain or control. And they are very much connected to the earth and vegetation and medicine, or even earth spirits. But anyway, it said that High John is considered to be a deified ancestor, considering the fact that it said that he once lived before. He was called on for help, and also for hope. There's many recordings, even in the slave narratives, so people said that they would call on High John to help them get through something. Much how people would say they call on Jesus, they called on High John. And so it said that he went back to Africa. He went back to Africa, but before he went back to Africa, he left his spirit in this root. And it is also recorded that he actually came back. And as I said before, it was said that to the enslaved Africans here in the U.S. to hold on because one day you will be free. So when it's said that he came back in a sense of influencing a band of enslaved Africans. This band of enslaved Africans rebelled and triggered multiple rebellions that ultimately led to freedom. And if you think about it, if our people did not decide to hold on, let people do what they were assigned to do, who we are as a people may have been taken out as far as our ethnic group or our ending of enslavement may not been when it was. It may have ended much later as well. People want to say that white Americans freed the slaves. No, not necessarily.
We freed ourselves.
We freed ourselves. They got tired of the rebellions, hence why we were painted as childlike. You can't trust them, so on and so forth, because they wanted to instill fear in other white Americans, including our spiritual beliefs. One of our parts of our spiritual beliefs was within Hajan, which was this quote unquote character that taught us to persevere, to also fight back, to hold on, to be able to keep an elevated mind frame too, to strategize and to plan out. Imagine trying to get yourself out of a situation as severe as slavery, but you're rash in your thinking. But you don't have a level head. You're not cool. How would that play out? And so a lot of people believe that many of those who were once enslaved just lived an entire life of misery mentally. But we don't give our ancestors enough credit to their mental strength, their spiritual strength. We don't give them enough credit, because to have mental and spiritual strength equates to elevation. Many of our ancestors were indeed elevated spirits in flesh, which goes back to our lore of the flying African. And the flying African were select individuals that had the ability to fly mentally and physically and spiritually. And when they would fly, it is said that you would see them as a blackbird in the sky. Some people would say a crow because they would get so high. And when they were flying, they were going back to Africa. It's said that some of these flying Africans were on the plantation, and their job was to help free other Africans that lost their wings or did not have the ability to fly, to be able to free them mentally or spiritually or physically. And so if you think back of the Hajan stories, where Hajan, there's one where he gathered slaves around a hickory nut tree, and he told people to get on this big black bird, and he took this big black bird with the Africans on this big black bird, and they flew away to Hallelujah Land. They went to hell to see the devil and all that kind of stuff, but their bodies were still there. Their bodies were still there. And it's recorded that the flying Africans would do the same thing. And so I say all this to say that when you put two and two together, Hajan was also considered a flying African too, because he had these same abilities. Again, a flying African was not just no ordinary African. The flying African was the African that was there to help other Africans free themselves, free their minds, free their understandings, and free themselves from bondage. And you had to be of a certain elevated standard to be a flying African. So it's said that flying Africans always come back and they don't leave us.
Mm.
And by him leaving that root, the spirit and the root, he said, use this root to all the conditions of your life, to conquer all of the conditions of your life. You feed my root, or you just rub my root, and I'll help you. So that root in itself is considered the master of all roots to African Americans in our culture and in our workings. It said, if you got a high John root, you can do anything. It's over anything. Court case, healing, love, anything. And so the root is also considered a hand. Sometimes it's worked like a mojo. The mojos are fed things like whiskey, personal concerns, so on and so forth. So yeah, I don't think, it seems like we do not give Hajan enough credit. We try to venture off because we want more. Mm-hmm. But again, he is our most deified ancestor. And some people would even connect him to the second coming of Jesus,
Right. But we did speak about earlier about, certain overlaps between Hoodoo and Christianity. And it makes sense, for our ancestors to begin to see things that way. Mm-hmm. And it kind of leads me to want to ask you this. And you've seen it. I know you've seen it, and I've seen it. Hoodoo being an African diasporic tradition, I've seen many attempt to divorce Hoodoo from Africa. Can you talk, and you have, like, throughout this conversation, but you have, spoke about it some, but if you can talk to some about the African connections with, what we did in Africa to here, because even, hold on, where is it at? Where is it at? Yeah. And so like I love this book here for anybody to go buy it. But she's a professor at Rutgers, a sister, I believe she's in the Africana Studies tradition. But she spoke about Bakongo roots of different religions and what we know today as the Congo, and different systems to Hoodoo. But if you can, what are your thoughts on the idea of people attempting to separate Africa from the Hoodoo tradition?
You can't. And anybody that's attempting to separate the two, they don't know the history. Mm-hmm. They don't know the deepness of Hoodoo, of what we do. So it's interesting that you talked about the Bakongo, right? So according to Bakongo tradition, but not limited to, there's something called nail down work, right? Nail down work is the element in which that you can take a nail to bind or entrap or make something stick. And this is a thing that is very much prominent in the Congo and also in Hoodoo. You see it with the Nkisi and so on and so forth, with the nailing. There are certain traditional and spiritual workings that we do in Hoodoo that involves using penny nails, coffin nails, so on and so forth, to nail down a situation or even a spirit or a person. In fact, it's even in our linguistics and our language and the way that we talk. Some people may even say when a person has a root on them, they say, you've been nailed down.
Mhm.
And so, with that being said, that's one aspect. There's another aspect, um, New Orleans hoodoo. New Orleans hoodoo is very, very much known for what's called the mojo. The
Mhm.
mojo is not just indicative to New Orleans, but the reason why I'm saying New Orleans at this time is because, see, I had a friend. My friend was Wolf from Senegal, and we were talking, and I was talking about the mojo, and she was talking about. She said, "Oh yeah, we still have that today."
Mhm.
Now, when enslaved Africans was brought over from Senegal, they were Muslim. But again, you cannot divorce the African from their traditional way of living,
Oh
even
yes.
if they do convert to another religion.
May I say something?
Mhm.
Where is it at? Right here. This book here. And I'm glad you said that because this book here, if you don't believe what the Queen has said, read this. This was views from Arab scholars on medieval West Africa. And many of the people in this book were Muslim, but they still practiced African
They put
traditions
it up.
that made Arabs say, they're not real Muslims then. But
Yep.
go ahead.
They said the same thing about us as far as Christianity. And the only reason why we became to try to fit in and denounce a lot of our customs and our understandings is to fit in more into what the idea of a Christianity was to the European or the white Americans, right? But going back to the Mojo and how it's connected to Senegal or the Wolof people, rather. Um, and so they brought over this bag, right? And really, it's called the Grigri.
Mm-hmm.
Mojo is a little bit different,
Mm-hmm.
but the Grigri um, is said to be a West African term, but rooted with French dialogue. The Wolof in Senegalese was colonized by the French, and that the New Orleans was also French territory and also Spanish territory,
Mm-hmm.
right? Hence, enslaved Africans also coming from Mexico, from the Gulf of Mexico, so on and so forth. But anyways, the Wolof came over into New Orleans and they brought over the Grigri.
Mm-hmm.
The Grigri is a protection pouch uh, that is worn even to date, and they put it on the babies to protect them. The Grigri is also created today. It's slightly different. The only difference is the way that you create a gree as opposed to the Wolof, the way they create a gree is that they use the text of the Quran, but we use the text of the Bible. That's the
Mm-hmm.
only difference.
Right.
And you will see people listed um, on the slave manifest under the name Senegal.
Mm-hmm.
This is the testament of where the people was from that were brought to New Orleans. That were
Mm-hmm.
brought to New Orleans. So Gregory had one of its first introductions to New Orleans hoodoo through the Wolof people. And even a lot of our dialect is African based. Um, tilapia, bakongo means to fish or fish.
Mm-hmm.
Tote. What
Mm-hmm.
is that? A bag.
Mm-hmm.
Bakongo, you
Mm-hmm.
know. Um, goober, goober, also of African, one African dialect, which
Jazz.
is a ground nut, banana, chimpanzee. I can keep going.
Mm-hmm.
We speak in different, we have influence of different African dialect and we don't even know it. We just
Yep.
think it's the English language. It's not. English language isn't even its own indigenous original
In
language.
fact, and that's the thing. Like anybody that has ever studied, I like to show books on the show, and so please forgive me. But anybody like Black English is not like a bastardized form of English. It is an African version of English. AAVE has its own rules outside of European English, but go ahead. Keep going.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so you also have foot trap magic, also rooted in the Congo. The
Mm-hmm.
way that we use eggs to clean ourselves,
Mm.
also rooted in West and Central Africa, especially West Africa. We will pass the egg through. We will pass the egg from our body, going downward, and then we will take this egg and break it at the crossroads. We give it to the spirit of the crossroads or spirits. The crossroads is an intersection where multiple spirits reside, and this is where our troubles will be taken away. You
Which
know,
does have a connection with the Congo, right? Congo's
not just the
traditional
Congo,
system.
but also the Yoruba.
Okay.
Mhm. This is a ritual that we do in Yoruba based religions as well.
Mm.
And I was in awe when I saw that. Uh,
Right. What did
with
it
my
make you feel
basis,
like whenever you saw that connection with
I am
Nigeria and
telling
here?
you, me being engulfed in the culture, African American culture, as it relates to hoodoo, helped me understand African traditional religions
Mm.
and how those aspects were brought in or combined with other aspects of our ancestors. How, so my initiations are of uh, Orisha and then also Palo. So we
Mm.
have Congo influence.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then we have, Yoruba of West Africa. And looking at the rituals that we do, I would ask my elders, I said, wait a minute. Now I need to understand because my elders are African American. Some of
Hmm.
them are. Is this African American? Is this hoodoo or is this of the religion? No, this of the religion. I don't even know what you're talking about. My mind just gets blown away every time I see a similarity, even in the customs and the taboos. My mind always gets blown away. There's a concept of what's called the um, the spirit of the soul, um, a dream soul. This is a concept that's also rooted of West Africa, and it's also rooted in hoodoo. It is said that when we go to sleep, our soul doesn't sleep; our soul travels, and there's customs and taboos that is rooted around that belief that we follow, such as when a baby is sleeping um, in the room, you're not supposed to sweep in that room because you may sweep the baby's dream soul away, so on and so forth. Um, not having mirrors,
Which are things that connect back to traditions in Africa, right?
absolutely, West Africa,
Mm.
absolutely, absolutely. Even the way that we understand um, those who we call over here witches.
Mm.
Um, I don't know if you heard of the understanding of witches. They can take the baby's breath away,
Yeah, I've heard that.
or they yeah,
Mm.
or suck the blood of the baby. Well, this is what the Yoruba believe.
Mm.
This is
Mm.
what the Yoruba believe, but we believe it over here too.
Right.
It's a lot. It is a lot that you can just
And
really
and so
connect.
that just goes to show that when our ancestors were kidnapped and brought over here, they like to come with a lot of fake historians and people that attempt to annihilate our culture and history, like to, you know, act as if we came over here as a blank slate and everything that we had and learned, we learned over here. And, just hearing these things and these cultural connections that we have and to have studied this, like, it's a beautiful thing to see how our people kept it, whether it, evolved a little bit, or, some names might have changed, but being from the South, I a lot of the things that you speak about, I've seen with my grandparents. I've seen with elders in the community, and they probably didn't even know that what they were doing was African necessarily.
No, it's them. It's their culture. Why would
Right,
they connect it? For what? It's we live in.
right, right. I do want to ask you this. In America, does hoodoo, because you mentioned New Orleans hoodoo, does hoodoo, like I'm from the Carolinas, I'm near Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina. You have the Geechee Gullah tradition, South Carolina and Georgia, and parts of North Carolina.
Mhm.
But like, is there does hoodoo differ in different parts of the country?
Yes and no.
Hmm.
We're leaning a little bit more towards no now. You want to know
Hmm.
why?
Why?
Okay. Now we went over the migration of the transatlantic slave trade and how all of our ancestors had to come together
Hmm.
when they went through the Caribbean first. And then you had another group of people from the Caribbean go into the US, and they had to come together with those from the transatlantic slave trade and plus those that were from the Caribbean. Now there's another migration that we do not really pay attention to as it accounts to hoodoo and also the age, the Great Migration.
Mm. From the South to the Midwest, huh?
Yes, from the South to the Midwest and, northern
Hmm.
areas. Do you know the people from the South, be it from Georgia, New Orleans, Tennessee, Mississippi, Arkansas, so on and so forth? What did these people have to do? They converse with each other, they talk to each other, they come together and share their ideas, they work together. They came to the north in hopes of a better life, so they thought it was. They understood it was the same thing, different day, different place.
Right, 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 right.
um, and so they still had to bond together. So all of these understandings of where people were once very segregated came back together.
Hmm.
And now we are in the digital age
Mm.
in which that we are sharing schools of thoughts and
Hmm.
logic,
Hmm.
so on and so forth. I am speaking from a person that is born and raised in Chicago.
Hmm.
And
You got roots
as
in Mississippi, right?
yeah, my mother is from Yazoo, Mississippi, and my father has roots in Memphis,
Beautiful,
Shelby. Hmm.
beautiful.
Um, and they say people in Chicago, they ain't nothing but no, they ain't nothing but Mississippi Negroes. They say, okay, whatever. But
Now, but Mississippi, but before you, but hold on, I just got to give props to Mississippi because I was talking to my brother Malik the other day, and we were just discussing how some of the most powerful people, such as Fannie Lou Hamer and Medgar Evers and a lot of just builders came from Mississippi that push the culture forward. But keep going, man. Like being from Mississippi is not a it's not a thing to look down upon.
not at all.
Like they tried, but at one point they tried to make us feel that way. Even the former, mayor of Jackson, Mississippi, Chokwe Lumumba, who tried to fucking put a Pan African, government in place in Mississippi, which was beautiful. You know what I'm saying? So shout out to Mississippi. I just wanted to salute, what I'm saying, Mississippi. I've been there several times. I love it, but keep going.
Yes. And, you know, when we look at the Great Migration and
Hmm.
we look at the fact that our families have traveled from south to north, and then guess what's happening now? Them
We're
same
coming
people are
back.
going back south
Coming back.
and coming back south. But what are they bringing with them? All of the knowledge that was combined together
Mm.
from all of these Africans that traveled all the way south, traveled north,
Hmm.
they're bringing that back.
Mm.
And so it's like a whole circle effect. So what was once so separated ain't so separated no more,
Hmm.
you know. And I realized that when I have the ability to converse with other people that are from the South, families from the South, and I would name something that, oh yeah, we do that too.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
but you from Georgia, right? And then I say something to someone, they be like, oh yeah, we do that too. But you from New Orleans.
Hmm.
I said, I mean, I do got ancestors that was from New Orleans, but I'm born and raised in Chicago.
Hmm.
And so it's getting a little bit more close knit than separated
Hmm.
than it was before.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we can thank um, our now here in the U.S., which is what
Hmm.
The Mississippi River,
Hmm.
and then that Mississippi Valley goes all the way from South Louisiana to
Yep.
Mississippi to Tennessee, and
Hmm.
you're hitting Illinois, you're hitting all the way to D.C. area, St. Louis, and all that kind of stuff.
People don't realize the Mississippi River was to, especially our ancestors during enslavement, and to even everybody here, was the same as what the Nile River was to
Hmm.
ancient Egyptians. It's the
Absolutely.
lifeblood of the country at that time.
Hmm.
Now I didn't mean to cut you off. You know what I'm
No,
saying?
no problem.
You just make a lot of great points that I like to attempt to help the audience connect these dots. I have two more questions that I want to ask you. For one, again, thank you for spending time with us and giving your expertise on this subject. It is truly appreciated. The first question that I want to ask you, does the graveyard or graveyard dirt have any significance in Hoodoo?
Absolutely. Um, Today I see it's pretty misunderstood. Because when people mention graveyard dirt, they generalize it. You
Hmm.
know, there are different parts of the graveyard that is used in hoodoo. Um, and dirt also goes back to the foot track workings. If you can get the dirt of a certain energy or a certain area, you can do something with it. And the graveyard is no different. Now, the graveyard is actually different from cemetery, but the
Hmm.
cemetery um, dirt is worked the same way now. You know, Graveyards used to be at the back of churches. The back of churches belong to
The
people
community.
of the community.
Yeah, my parents' church is a community church, and all of my ancestors are buried back there.
Absolutely. And then, so with that being said, originally the aspect of graveyard dirt is the dirt from ancestors.
Hmm.
And the graveyard dirt was used to work um, things to increase the ability or the potency of your work and also to call on help. But now we have cemetery dirt, and now we have plots where foreign people are buried as well. And so we also have trees and so on and so forth. So it's a difference if you were to get the dirt from a general area that is not connected from a grave, which will call on the collective spirits, than if you were to go to a particular grave of a particular spirit to use that dirt.
Hmm.
Um, we did talk about ancestors in the beginning of the interview.
Hmm.
Dirt of ancestors is used for ancestor veneration and honor and calling them.
Hmm.
Much ashes to ashes, dust to dust. We return back to the earth. So it's used the same way. Even ATR, we have something that's called like ancestral. We have the pots, so on and so forth. Certain ingredients go into that, but I'm not going to get into that because it's secrets. But anyways, it is rooted in African traditional understanding and belief. Um, Going back to ancestors, those dirts were actually fed.
too.
Hmm. Hmm.
You feed her the rooster, you feed her the hen, even a goat, so on and so forth, to help. Um, because blood is considered life source. This is, and so anything that a spirit touches or the remnants of a spirit touches has power. And graveyard dirt is also used, like I said, depending on whose grave you go to. And grave robbing, uh,
Because that was a thing for
yeah,
real.
people used to rob graves. And because of that, powerful conjure people, root workers, so on and so forth, if they were really powerful, they're not going to be buried at the site that people think they're buried,
Hmm.
because people will go take their dirt, they will dig them up, take items of the clothing, the bones, so on and so forth, even whatever they were buried with, because it is said that everything that that person had or did has power, and it
Mm.
transfers
You,
into that area or that plot.
mhm.
So,
You know what that reminds me of? I saw a video where it was like a white man who was like a cultural anthropologist. I don't know what state he was in, but he was in the woods, deep in the woods, and he had found Dr. Buzzard's grave.
mm,
And it was unmarked, but I guess through reading some of the family, Bibles and family history that he was able to find it. But that what you stated, you know, I'm not gonna let you know where I'm buried. When I first, like, I never knew that, right? And so at first, when I saw that, I was like, damn, nobody cared about him. You know what I'm saying, like that. But it might not have been that. He might have
mm-mm,
requested to be
yes.
buried off in those woods. You know what I'm saying?
hmm
Um,
And
mhm,
woods is very much connected to spirits.
mm,
A lot of spirits live there. According to hoodoo lore, that's what a Plat Eye is.
mm,
These are wandering
mm.
spirits. It is also recorded that is where people go to commit suicide.
Wow.
Um, it is connected to where many of our people were hung or even again put to rest.
Hmm.
The 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 woods, the wooded area, is also worked in a sense like the crossroad, because
Mm,
this is an area that we would use to do workings,
hmm.
or to leave uh, the departed. And what I mean by the departed, not just burying our ancestors or those who passed away,
Hmm.
but we would break curses in the woods as
Yeah,
well, or
yeah,
hexes in the woods.
yeah.
Um, the tree is connected to ancestors as well, through its roots
Which
because
is
of the ground.
extremely African.
Yes, through the roots because of the ground. Said that we would return back to the ground. And some of these trees are used to heal too. We would cut them,
Hmm.
and we will pass people through the trees, and also we would also, especially if the wooded area is next to a river, this is where we would break a lot of the hexes, and we
Mm.
would do what's called our version of exorcisms there.
Hmm.
Uh-huh. And if you know how to perform the ritual, it's still done today, and it's done in African traditional religions too. My mind was blown when I saw that too. But again, I can't give the secrets.
Yeah, it's
But
and
yes,
that's another thing. Like for people that are interested in these things, there aren't really any shortcuts.
no,
You if this is what you're interested in, it's just the same way. And I like to frame it this way, especially for my brothers and sisters in America, where the same way that if you wanted to join the Nation of Islam, you would have to remember certain things to get your X. If you wanted to become a part of the Christian church, you would have to go through a certain thing to be a part of that church, which a lot of times includes a baptism and other things.
hmm
Um, when it comes to hoodoo and also African traditional religions, it's not a simple matter of you just saying, this is what I am, and getting on Facebook and acting like an expert. We have to even, like I've even interviewed people who are of, the Prince Hall Mason tradition here. There is steps that you have to go through to be a part of that. I always say, regardless to whatever science or path you want to take, do it legit though. Do it for real. Don't attempt to skip steps. Even if whatever the path is takes years, you will be better off for it by doing it the right way than attempting to skip steps.
Mm-hmm.
With that said, one last question. We've talked about the medicinal aspects of hoodoo. We've talked about the magic. But there's also a practical side of hoodoo, according to this book that I read and a few of also, yeah, it's right here. This one is good too for people that haven't read it. But they talk about plantation hoodoo being obviously medicinal, understanding the herbs, which you explained to us earlier. Also, you have the magic side, which, I guess some people would consider the spiritual side.
Mm-hmm.
But you also have the practical side, which were things like midwifery, delivering babies, wet nursing. Can you talk to us about why, obviously, these scholars and academics who are attempting to push the culture forward through the study of African people have built on it. But when you look at a lot of people that, talk about, practicing hoodoo, they don't ever really talk about these practical aspects of, the art of delivering babies, the art of nursing babies. Well, we know that Black women are in danger every time they go to the hospital to deliver a baby, right? This seems like this would be something that would be important to the culture. Like even with we were looking at the group earlier today, and we saw people stealing people's jewels. We saw people that were constantly asking questions about if my wife does this or my husband does that. And don't get me wrong, it is what it is. It's your life. But things like nursing, things like understanding the medicinal aspects of herbs, things like the understanding of how to deliver a baby, which has always been a part of hoodoo, are important. If you can, I just want you to speak on that some, because I think the practical aspects of hoodoo sometimes get lost in the magic aspect, because that's what everybody seems to be drawn to.
Yes. Hoodoo is not just oils and powders and jars and so on and so forth, and how to work a person. The other aspect is that it's pragmatic, it's logical, it makes sense. And I always say the spiritual complements the physical. And one cannot live without each other. One cannot exist without each other. The whole reason of the spiritual aspect that motivates us is because of the physical, our physical conditions. And when it comes to midwifery, that speaks of our understanding of how to deliver life or spirit into this earthly plane. And we had to learn how to do that safely by studying the body, the woman's body. Midwives are actually recorded to use, different things that aren't used now. today, especially in hospitals. You're not going to see a hospital put a Rose of Jericho under a woman that is delivering her baby to see how long her labor is going to take. You know, um, you know, you delivering children on the backs is seen to be very much unnatural.
Facts.
That is not a natural.
Doulas will tell you this to this day.
It's not a natural way to even lie. According to even our history, our lore or customs, they say what they tell you: don't sleep on your back, or the witch will ride you.
Yeah.
You can become paralyzed. You get stuck in, or you can become stuck in between dimensions. The same applies to delivering a baby. You know, it's recorded that children become stuck the most if they try to deliver the baby on the back. You know,
it goes against all type of physics and science. You know, like
physics and science, spiritual aspects and logic, and all of it correlates together. And the aspect of midwives, they serve the aspect of healing, not just delivering babies, but they knew things to heal the average person as well, because there were signs and symptoms of a person who may have been pregnant. There's post-pregnancy as well. And also someone that isn't pregnant, and they knew the body language and what ticks of a woman, and not just a woman, but also a man, because they also understood fertility as well. And all of that is tied into hoodoo. All of the physical and the spiritual is tied into hoodoo. And I see a lot of people denounce the physical aspect of hoodoo, the practical aspect of hoodoo, like you said. So, for example, people want to do fertility workings. They just want to they get the dowel or whatever, and anoint it to give it, pretend like it's pregnant. Whatever method they decide they want to do, they have access to the woman that wants to be pregnant. They don't prescribe the herbs. They don't prescribe the mental things that a woman is supposed to do to shift her mental state, to get her to ease her mind so that she can become pregnant. Because also the understanding is, it said, the more comfortable the woman, the higher the fertility. Hence why they say a lot of children are born on accident, or when you're having fun.
A little bit too comfortable.
Too comfortable, because it has a lot to do with the lubrication and the acceptance of the sperm. And so, with that being said, you have to have knowledge of all these things. You cannot give half prescriptions. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. This work also goes down to prescriptions as well. Hence why we have doctors in our practices, And the midwife is a type of doctor. She's a healer. If you had the ability to heal, if you had the ability to bring back life or to bring life, you were categorized as doctor. So yeah.
That's deep. Mama Yana, I wanted to say thank you again for coming to the Wild of Dawn platform and giving us a wonderful interview. For those who are interested in learning more, how can they follow you?
They can follow me on Facebook at Deyana, Deyana Adeyefa, which is my Ifa name, Adeyefa, Jene, Jenee. They can also follow me on my like page at the Hoodoo Culture by Mama Yana. And then I also have YouTube, which is Mama Yana, and also podcasts. Also titled Mama Yana as well.
No doubt. You'll be able to find all these links in the description. So definitely check the description. And again, Mama Yana, we appreciate the time. We appreciate the energy, and we appreciate just the understanding of African culture and the links and the genetic links that we have here in America. So again, thank you.
No, thank you for having me, and I hope I was able to provide all that you needed
Yes.
and articulate everything that you were looking for.
Oh, you most
Um,
definitely did and more.
yes, especially through this raspy voice. Speaking of medicinal healing, I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna get these teas. You know, they said the
Right
teas.
on.
You get that mullein and that lungwort, and you get to going, and maybe some slippery elm. You know, the slippery elm is used to lubricate the throat. So yeah, I gotta get to it.
Well, you have a good night, Mama Yana, and thank you again.
All right, you too.
All right. Peace.